3:33 in the morning. You wake up inexplicably, look at your phone, and it's always the same time, every single day. And you think it's a coincidence, right? That it's just your body having some sleep disorder, maybe anxiety, maybe too much coffee before bed. But what if I told you there's something much deeper happening here? Something your conscious mind can't see, but your unconscious is desperately trying to show you. There is a hidden pattern in your life that you ignore every day, and it is sabotaging your most important decisions. It's not paranoia. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's science. It's psychology. And it's about you. Carl Jung, the psychiatrist who revolutionized our understanding of the human mind, discovered something that most people still prefer to ignore. He realized that our unconscious mind doesn't function like a dead archive of memories and traumas. It functions like an ultra-sensitive radar, picking up information from the environment, processing data that our consciousness doesn't even perceive, and trying to communicate through what he called synchronicity. Synchronicity isn't about believing in luck or destiny. It's about recognizing that there is a layer of reality operating right under your nose and you're blind to it. Imagine your mind as an iceberg. The part you know, your conscious thoughts, your rational decisions, represents only 10% of what is really happening. The other 90% is working 24 hours a day, processing patterns, making connections, trying to guide you, and here's where it gets disturbing. When you always wake up at the same time, when you meet the same person in different places repeatedly, when a song plays the exact moment you were thinking about it, it's not the universe conspiring in your favor. It's your own unconscious mind projecting meaning onto events that to others seem completely random. Think with me. How many times have you had that strange feeling that you should or shouldn't do something? How many times have you ignored that feeling and then regretted it? How many times have you followed an inexplicable intuition that worked out in ways you couldn't predict rationally? Modern analysis of behavioral psychology reveals something Jung intuited decades ago. People who pay attention to these patterns, who recognize and respond to synchronicities, have a 40% higher chance of making decisions they consider right for their lives. It's not magic. It's not cheap spirituality. It's your internal navigation system functioning the way it should. But here's the problem. We live in a society that teaches you to ignore all of this. Teaches you that intuition is nonsense, that patterns are paranoia, that you should only trust cold, calculated logic. And the result? Millions of people living lives completely disconnected from themselves, making decisions based on what others expect, on what is socially accepted, on what makes sense on paper, but deep down they know is wrong. Have you ever stopped to think about why so many people are depressed nowadays? Why anxiety has become an epidemic? Why people feel lost even though they have everything they theoretically should want? It's because we are living against our own nature. We are ignoring the only system that evolved with us over millions of years to help us navigate the complexity of existence. Jung documented cases of patients who began to pay attention to synchronicities and literally transform their lives, not because some cosmic miracle happened, but because they stopped fighting their internal guidance system. They stopped making decisions only with their head and began to integrate the wisdom of the unconscious. But there is a dark side to all this that almost no one talks about. When you start paying attention, when you begin to see these patterns, there's no turning back. You can no longer live on autopilot. You can no longer pretend you don't know when something is wrong. You can no longer deceive yourself by saying it's a coincidence when all the signs are screaming in your face. It's a heavy responsibility. It's waking up to life for real. And not everyone is ready for it. The question that remains is, are you? Do you have the courage to start paying attention to the patterns in your own life? Or do you prefer to continue pretending that everything is a coincidence, that you don't have an internal navigation system, that you should only trust external logic and ignore everything that comes from within? If this made you question something in your life, if it reminded you of a pattern you've been ignoring, write here in the comments what it was. It doesn't need to be detailed. You don't need to expose your entire life, but share at least a word, a feeling, something that connected you with what I just talked about. Because recognition is the first step, and maybe you aren't as alone on this journey as you think. Have you ever woken up one day, looked in the mirror, and didn't recognize yourself? Not physically, but looked into your own eyes and thought, who is this person? What am I doing with my life? It's a strange feeling, right? As if you were living someone else's life, following a script someone wrote for you but was never really yours. Millions of people live exactly like this every day, on autopilot, missing the only real clues that could save them from the existential void that corrodes inside. And the worst part, they don't even know they're missing out. Jung observed something devastating in his patients over decades of clinical work. He realized that when we consistently ignore the meaningful patterns in our lives, when we close our eyes to synchronicities, to those moments when something within us whispers, "Pay attention," we develop what modern psychology calls existential desynchronization. Imagine your life as a house where all the clocks show different times. The kitchen clock says 8 in the morning, the bedroom clock says 3 in the afternoon, the living room clock says midnight. You can technically function in this house. You can eat, sleep, work. But there is a constant tension, a feeling that something is fundamentally wrong, that you can never synchronize with the natural rhythm of your own existence. That's exactly what happens when you live disconnected from internal patterns. You function, but you don't live. You exist, but you're not present. You make decisions, but they are not truly yours. They are decisions based on what others expect, what society dictates, what seems right on paper, but deep down you know they're taking you further away from who you really are. And here's a truth few have the courage to admit. This disconnection has a real biological cost. Recent studies show that people who live chronically out of sync with their internal navigation patterns report 60% higher levels of anxiety and depression. It's not just feeling lost. It is being biologically at odds with your own nervous system. Think with me. How many times have you felt that inexplicable anxiety? That feeling of always being late for something even when there's nothing specific to do? How many times have you woken up tired even after 8 hours of sleep? How many times have you felt empty even after achieving goals you should celebrate? That's not laziness. It's not lack of gratitude. It's not imposter syndrome, although it might seem like it. It's your body reacting to the fact that you're living a life that isn't authentically yours. It's like trying to wear clothes the wrong size. You can wear them, but you will never feel comfortable. Jung documented cases of successful executives who fell into deep depression for no apparent reason. People who had everything society tells us we should want: money, status, recognition, but who were dying inside because they had spent years ignoring all the internal signals saying, "This isn't for you. You're on the wrong path. This isn't who you are." And the cruelest part of all this, society reinforces this disconnection. It teaches you that following intuition is nonsense, that patterns are paranoia, that you should only trust external logic, other people's advice, social expectations. It teaches you to distrust the only thing that truly knows you, your own inner wisdom. But there is something even more disturbing that Jung observed. He realized that there is a point of no return in existential desynchronization, a moment when you become so disconnected from yourself that you can't even hear your own inner signals, even when you want to. It's like a musician who lost their ear. The ability is still there, but it was so neglected that it seems to have disappeared. How many people do you know who live like this? Who constantly complain about life but never do anything to change? Who say they want one thing but always choose another? Who seem to be always chasing something but never know exactly what? It's not lack of character. It's not laziness. It's complete disconnection from their own internal navigation system. The hardest truth of all is that recognizing this disconnection is only the first step. Because once you see, once you understand what's happening, you can't pretend you don't know anymore. You can't live on autopilot without feeling the weight of your own choice. And this is where the real journey begins. It's not about finding your passion or discovering your purpose. It's about something much deeper and more frightening. It's about having the courage to look at your own shadow, all the aspects of yourself you've learned to reject, all the parts of your personality you've hidden because they weren't socially accepted. Jung knew that there is no reconnection with authenticity without this encounter, without confronting what he called the psychological shadow, all the rejected, denied, buried aspects of our personality. And this encounter is not optional if you really want to stop living someone else's life. If you've made it this far and recognize something of yourself in this description, if you felt that tightness in your chest, knowing that you're living disconnected from your own essence, maybe it's time to take a brave step towards what can truly transform your life. By acquiring the Revealing the Shadow guide, you're not just buying an ebook. You are choosing to face the most revolutionary and transformative aspect of human psychology. The encounter with your own shadow, with all the parts of you that were rejected, denied, but hold the key to your real authenticity. The link is pinned in the first comment. But tell me one thing. Looking at your life right now, can you identify when you felt this disconnection the strongest? In which situations do you most feel like you're living someone else's life? Comment here, because maybe sharing this is the first step to reconnecting with who you really are. Do you know someone who can't make a decision without consulting tarot? Who sees signals in absolutely everything? Who can't leave the house without checking the horoscope? Who interprets every repeated number as a cosmic message? Who turned the search for synchronicities into an obsession that paralyzes their life? There's a dark side to synchronicity that nobody tells you. A side that can turn you into a prisoner of your own patterns. And this is a truth few have the courage to admit. The line between spiritual wisdom and obsessive-compulsive disorder is much thinner than you think. Jung documented disturbing cases of patients who started paying attention to synchronicities healthily, but gradually became completely dependent on these signs to function. People who couldn't make any decision, from choosing what to eat for breakfast to deciding whom to marry without some external confirmation they interpreted as cosmic. Our analysis of modern behavioral psychology reveals something Jung intuited, but today we can explain more precisely. This obsession with signs is not elevated spirituality. It is a sophisticated form of obsessive-compulsive disorder, disguised as a spiritual quest. It's what happens when you transfer responsibility for your choices to external forces, whether they are cosmic, divine, or unconscious. Imagine living like this. Imagine waking up every day unable to decide whether to go to work without first checking if the license plate number of the first car you see has any special meaning. Imagine not being able to end a relationship that clearly isn't working because you're waiting for a definitive signal from the universe. Imagine halting your entire life waiting for external confirmation for decisions you, deep down, already know the answer to. It's a cruel form of prison, because you're no longer living. You are constantly in standby mode, awaiting cosmic permission to be who you are and do what you need to do. And worst of all, the more you look for signs, the less they appear naturally. Jung realized this paradox decades before modern psychology could scientifically explain it. He observed that true synchronicity happens when you are living authentically, when you're aligned with your deepest nature, when you're not forcing anything. It's like trying to sleep. The more you try, the harder it gets. But there's something even more unsettling about this trap. People who fall into it usually started with genuine intuition, with a real connection to their internal patterns. The problem is that instead of using this awareness as a compass, they turned it into a crutch. Instead of developing confidence in their ability to navigate life, they became addicted to external validation. And modern society, with all its obsession for spiritual self-help and personal development, often reinforces this dependency. It teaches you that you should always be connected, always tuned in, always receiving messages. As if living was about deciphering secret codes instead of simply having the courage to be who you are. The most brutal truth is that real synchronicity, the one Jung truly discovered, doesn't work like that. It's not about receiving orders from the universe. It's about recognizing when you're aligned with your own authentic nature. It's a thermometer, not a GPS. It shows you when you're on the right path, but doesn't tell you which path to take. Consider the difference. A healthy person perceives synchronicities as a confirmation that they're living authentically. A person addicted to signs needs synchronicities to decide how to live. It's the difference between using a compass when lost and becoming unable to take a step without consulting the compass. And here's the reality check no one wants to hear. If you need constant external confirmation to live your life, you're not being spiritual. You're being cowardly. You're outsourcing the responsibility for your choices because you're afraid to accept the consequences of being who you really are. Jung knew this. He saw patients who used spirituality, psychology, even therapy as ways to avoid the fundamental responsibility of simply living, of making imperfect choices, of making mistakes, of learning, of growing through real experience, not through interpreting symbols and signs. True synchronicity is silent. It happens when you're so aligned with yourself that you don't need to look for confirmation. When your actions flow naturally from your deepest essence. When you're not living to impress anyone, not even the universe. But there's a cruel irony in this whole trap. People who most search for signs are usually those who most need to learn to trust themselves. They're people who are so afraid of making mistakes, so afraid of disappointing, so afraid of not being approved, that they prefer to live in a fantasy of cosmic connection rather than face the raw reality of being an imperfect human being making imperfect decisions. And the result? A life in constant preparation, never in execution. A life waiting for the perfect moment, the definitive sign, the absolute confirmation. A life that is never really lived because it's always being validated. The lingering question is devastating. Could you be using spirituality to avoid life? Are you looking so much for signs that you forgot to live? Have you turned the quest for authenticity into a new way of avoiding being authentic? If anything I talked about here bothered you, if it made you question your own habits, if it made you think about someone you know who lives like this, write here in the comments a single word that sums up what you're feeling now. Just one word. Because sometimes recognizing is the first step to freeing yourself. If you've made it this far, thank you for staying with me in this reflection. I know these aren't easy topics, but they are necessary. If this content made you think, if it helped you see something new about yourself or life, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It's not just to help the algorithm, it's because conversations like this need to happen more. And if you know someone who also seeks this type of deep reflection, share this video. Because sometimes an honest conversation can change a life.